They say Lagos doesn't sleep, but I've learned that it remembers. It remembers things you thought were buried beneath promotion letters, gated estates, wedding invites, and filtered smiles. It remembers you when you least expect it, like on a Tuesday afternoon, in an air-conditioned church office, where I sat beside the woman I was supposed to marry, nodding politely through our final marriage counseling session. I remember Adi's hand brushing mine, the sparkle of her ring catching light, the pastor's voice talking about commitment, responsibility, and faith. I was nodding along, until the door creaked behind me, and there she was. Saad. 15 years vanished like mist, and suddenly I was 20 again, reckless, angry at the world, and stupid enough to believe that one night couldn't echo forever. She didn't speak. She just stood there, eyes fixed on me, like she was waiting for the weight of my silence to crush itself. I tried to look away, tried to pretend I didn't know her. But memory doesn't play fair. It dragged me back to that night, dim light, her nervous laugh, a kiss that tasted like escape. I had left before morning, never looked back, never called. Now she was here, and the child standing beside her looked just like me. Welcome to Luxurious Echoes. Make sure you like and subscribe. Let's get into the story. 3 weeks to go. That's all that was left between me and the wedding people in Lagos would call the event of the year. We had the venue in Lekki booked, the decorators finalizing their mock-ups, and the caterers fighting for who would serve the high table. I'd rehearsed my speech for the engagement ceremony and smiled through all the pre-wedding photo shoots Adiz insisted on, even when the heat under the Igbada was unbearable. I was marrying into power, into the kind of family that owned banks, schools, and whispered influence. And somehow, I had become the man mothers prayed over their daughters for. My name rang in boardrooms, my suits fit better than ever, and my mother, God bless that woman, had finally stopped asking prayer warriors to break marital delay. She was planning a wedding as though it were a campaign. As for me, I just wanted it to be over. Not because I didn't love Adiz, but because everything felt like a performance I couldn't step out of. And I had perfected the role. The loyal son, the successful groom-to-be, the reformed man Lagos could trust. No one needed to know that some nights I still woke up with memories I thought I'd outgrown. The truth is, I had built a life designed to silence who I used to be. Back in the university, I was a different animal, hungry, angry, always hustling for the next thing. Grades, gigs, girls. I slept in overcrowded hostels, ate whatever was hot and cheap, and laughed too loudly to drown out the fact that I was one mistake away from falling apart. That life felt like another man's now. I had buried it in finely tailored suits and strategic business partnerships. But sometimes, late at night, after long meetings, after Adiz had gone home and the house was quiet, I remembered things I shouldn't. Faces, words, a particular night, blurry around the edges, but sharp in all the wrong places. A girl whose name I never forgot. Saad. Just once. One night. We were two strangers trying to escape something with our bodies. I left before morning, left a fake number, left the guilt buried beneath ambition. I told myself it didn't matter, that nothing would ever come of it. I thought Lagos was too big for ghosts, until I saw her again. It happened during our final round of premarital counseling. The kind where the pastor leans in and asks uncomfortable questions about finances, children, submission, and temptations. I sat beside Adiz in the cool, marbled office of her family's church in Lekki Phase 1, nodding and answering like the model fiancé. I was playing the part well, confident, charming, appropriately humble. Then, as the session wrapped up, I turned to retrieve Adiz's clutch bag from the pew behind us, and froze. She stood at the back of the church, unmoving, dressed in a faded blouse and jeans, her arms crossed. Saad. 15 years hadn't erased her from my memory. Her face was sharper now, eyes quieter, older, guarded. But it was her. My body reacted before my brain caught up. My stomach dropped. My throat dried. I turned my face back to the front like nothing happened, heart pounding as if I'd been caught stealing. Adiz didn't notice. The pastor smiled and said a final prayer. I couldn't say amen. She didn't say a word at first. She just watched me, like she was waiting for me to recognize something beyond her face. Guilt? Memory? Accountability? I tried to leave quickly, murmuring something to Adiz about needing to check on the decorator. But just outside the church doors, I heard her voice. Calm. Low. I just need 10 minutes. I turned. We were alone under the church's marble archway, shielded from the compound by tall hedges. Saad stood there with the patience of someone who had waited too long to be ignored. I searched her face for drama, manipulation, anger, but all I saw was resolve. It's not about you, she said before I could speak. It's about a child. A boy. He's 15. Yours. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because that was the only reaction my body knew. You can't be serious, I muttered, but she was. I don't want your money, she added. I want you to see him, that's all. After that, do what you like. Then she walked away, and for the first time in a long time I had no script to follow. I don't remember everything about that night, but I remember enough. I was in my final year at LeSU, broke and bitter about a course carryover, and I had just fought with my roommate over a missed electric bill. I went out that night to numb the noise in my head. There was a campus jam happening in Festac, and I went alone, high on adrenaline and recklessness. That's where I met Saad. She wasn't loud like the other girls. She stood near the back, holding a Fanta bottle, laughing at someone's joke. We talked. I don't remember the full conversation, but I remember feeling seen. Understood in a way that didn't demand performance. When we left together, it wasn't planned. It just happened. A tiny rented room near the school gate. No promises. No names beyond first ones. Just two strangers desperate to forget something. She cried a little after. I didn't ask why. I just said I'd call. I never did. The next morning, I told myself it didn't matter. She'd move on. I'd move up. I erased it like all the other poor choices of that year. Now, 15 years later, she had returned, not as a victim, not as a woman begging for attention, but as a mother. And her words haunted me. Just see him. She hadn't asked for money or drama. She just wanted me to look at what I had walked away from before it had even begun. Still, my first instinct was denial. This was too neat, too well-timed, too destructive. I was weeks from marriage. This felt like sabotage. Or maybe karma. I kept telling myself she was lying. That she was desperate. That this was all some elaborate setup. But beneath all my excuses, I was afraid. Because what if it was true? What if there was a teenage boy somewhere in Lagos, walking around with my jawline or my temper or my laugh? What if I had spent the last 15 years becoming a good man, while ignoring the consequences of a single night? I didn't want to believe her, but I couldn't unhear her either. 2 days later, I found myself in Surulere, sitting nervously in a cheap eatery that sold jollof rice in plastic plates and had ceiling fans that did more humming than cooling. I didn't tell Adiz. I told her I was meeting an old business associate on the mainland. Saad walked in first, still quiet, still composed. She nodded toward the door, and then he walked in. A boy, tall for his age, with dark brown skin and a sharp face that made my heart stop. He glanced at me and muttered a shy good evening. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, because in that moment, every doubt I carried folded in on itself. The boy looked too much like me at that age, same eyes, same stubborn chin. Even the way he shifted uncomfortably in his seat was familiar. I felt like I was staring at a version of myself that had slipped through time, and guilt rose in my throat like bile. I had missed everything, his first steps, his first day at school, every scraped knee, every birthday. I had missed it all. Saad didn't speak much during the meeting. She let the silence do the work. The boy, she called him Timmy, talked about his school, his interest in coding, and how he liked playing chess more than football. Every sentence tightened the noose around my chest. This wasn't just a face. This was a whole life, a whole person, and I had been absent. I tried to stay calm, to listen, to nod like this was normal. But inside I was breaking. When they left, Saad placed a manila envelope on the table. His birth certificate, some pictures, and school records. Look through them. I'll give you time. Then she added, "He doesn't know who you are yet. I didn't want to tell him until you were sure you wanted to be involved." That hit harder than the pictures. She had protected him even when I didn't deserve protection. I watched them walk away through the dusty glass door, and in that moment, I knew I couldn't walk back into my wedding plans like nothing had changed, because everything had. I sat in my car for a long time that evening, parked on a side street in Yaba, holding the envelope like it might explode in my hands. The pictures told a story I wasn't ready for. Birthdays without me, school awards, holidays, scraped knees, and quiet smiles. And Timmy's eyes stared back from every photo like a question I had avoided for too long. Still, I told myself there was one way to be sure. DNA. Cold. Scientific. Final. I called Saad and asked for it. She agreed instantly without hesitation. "I already did mine," she said. "If you're ready, I'll book the lab." The next day we went together. The nurse swabbed my mouth. It was quick, clinical, and somehow humiliating, like I needed a test to admit what my heart already knew. When we walked out, Saad didn't look at me. "I'm not here to fight you," she said. "I just want him to know the truth one day, even if it's late." Her words haunted me all the way back to Akoi. When I got home, Adiz was curled up on the couch, scrolling through Pinterest boards for wedding decor ideas. She asked about my meeting, and I smiled too quickly, gave some vague story about traffic, and kissed her forehead. But the lie stuck to my skin like sweat. That night I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Timmy's face. I heard his voice, and I hated myself for being both too late and too cowardly. I told myself I would come clean to Adiz soon. But not yet. Not while the test was pending. Not while I still had time to pretend. I buried myself in wedding logistics, smiled through food tasting, and nodded through vendor calls. But I was unraveling. Every laughter felt forced. Every hug made me flinch. And the worst part was knowing this was all my fault. Not Sada's. Not Timmy's. Mine. And the truth was coming whether I was ready or not. Adiz had a way of asking questions that didn't sound like accusations. That week, I noticed it more than ever. The soft tilt of her head when I didn't laugh at a joke. The subtle pause before asking, "You okay?" When she caught me lost in thought. We were at a family dinner in her father's compound in Akoi, surrounded by too much marble and not enough warmth, and I found myself chewing the same piece of goat meat for 5 minutes. Her hand brushed mine under the table. "You've been distant," she said later in the car, not angry, just observant. "Is it the pressure?" I nodded and blamed work, wedding stress, too many decisions. She nodded too, but I saw the flicker in her eyes. She wasn't fooled. Adiz wasn't a fool. For all her elegance and quietness, she was a woman who had grown up in a house full of politicians. She knew how to read what people didn't say, but she didn't press. Maybe she was afraid of the answer, or maybe she had already started guessing. Meanwhile, my mother had shifted into full campaign manager mode. Every conversation was about image, what guests would think, what the society papers would write, what shade of blue would complement the family name. She called twice a day with updates. The baker was now offering 5 tiers. The musicians had confirmed. Someone from Adiz's family wanted to speak with the decorator. I tried to care. I really did. But every phone call felt like a performance I couldn't walk off stage from. "You're marrying into legacy," she reminded me one evening. "This isn't just about you and Adiz. This is about 2 empires coming together." I almost laughed. Empires. Meanwhile, the DNA test results were still pending, and my silence was growing heavier than my fitted tux. I began avoiding everyone. I stayed later at the office. I stopped answering questions I didn't want to lie through. And worst of all, I started feeling like a stranger in my own life, like I was watching a wedding happen to someone else. The next time I saw Saad, it wasn't in a neutral restaurant or a quiet park. It was in her world. I asked to visit not because I was ready, but because something inside me needed to understand how she had managed to do alone what I never even acknowledged. She lived in a modest flat in Aguda, a first-floor unit in a building that smelled faintly of kerosene and fabric softener. It wasn't dirty, just tired, like life had worn it out. Timmy was at school, so it was just the two of us. Her sitting room had a fan that clicked at intervals, mismatched cushions, and the faint echo of children's cartoons from the neighbor's flat. She offered me malt and didn't sit until I did. For the first time, I noticed the lines around her eyes, the tension in her shoulders, the kind of beauty that doesn't advertise itself. Saad didn't say much at first. She watched me look around, quietly, like she wanted me to see how real everything was. "This is what 15 years looks like," she said finally. "Just in case you thought I made it up." I didn't know how to respond. Everything about that room screamed survival. A single mother raising a child in a city that punishes poverty. And she had done it without ever once asking me for help. There were school photos on the shelf, exercise books neatly stacked in a corner, and a large plastic drum of water near the kitchen. Evidence of life lived on generator schedules and water scarcity. "I didn't come for money," she said again. "I came because someone in your circle saw us last week. I don't know who, but someone's asking questions now." That's when it hit me. Saad hadn't reappeared to ruin my life. She came because mine was about to expose hers. "I just want to protect him," she added, softer now. "I don't need your approval, but I know how these things can spiral. You may not care, but people with your name, they play dirty." And I believed her, not just because of her words, but because of how much she wasn't saying. Because behind her strength I saw fear, the kind that comes from fighting alone too long. The email came on a Thursday morning, just before a strategy meeting with my company's board. The subject line was cold. "Paternity test result. Case number 20496. My hands trembled as I opened it. I could barely focus, the room around me fading into static as I read the words that confirmed what my soul already knew. Probability of paternity 99.9999%. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at the screen, heart thudding in a slow, shameful rhythm. All the denial I'd been clinging to evaporated with one PDF attachment. I didn't go into the meeting. I got into my car, drove with no real direction, and found myself parked at the edge of Third Mainland Bridge, watching the city glitter under gray skies. It was ironic, really. I had spent years chasing a version of myself I thought was noble, polished, untouchable. But under the suit, I was still that boy who ran when things got hard. Still the coward who left a girl in the morning with nothing but a lie. I don't know how long I stayed there. At some point, a hawker tapped on my window to offer gala and water. I waved him off and realized my hands were still shaking. I took a deep breath and called Saad. I couldn't bring myself to say the words out loud, so I just said, "I got it." She didn't gloat. She didn't even pause. "Okay," she said quietly. "Now what?" I told her I wanted to be involved. She didn't thank me. She didn't smile. "Then show up," she replied. "Not for me. For him." That call ended quickly. No emotions. No dramatic reunion. Just a mother laying down terms for the man who should have been there all along. And honestly, I respected her for that. I had been expecting relief or maybe forgiveness. What I got was something better, accountability. As I drove away, Lagos traffic closing around me like arms, I realized that the test wasn't for me to prove anything to the world. It was a mirror, and I finally saw who I'd been avoiding. That weekend, Adi's family hosted a brunch at the Civic Center. Something about merging social circles and cementing alliances. I wore my best navy blue blazer, smiled through endless conversations, posed for photos I didn't want to be in. All the while, my mind was with Timmy, with Saad, with the weight of a truth sitting on my chest like a cinder block. I tried to tell Adiz that evening. We were in her living room, alone, sipping Zobo out of fancy wine glasses. She was talking about honeymoon destinations, Santorini, maybe Morocco, and I just froze. Every time I tried to speak, my mouth dried. The words crawled back down my throat. Because I knew the moment I opened my mouth, my life would split into before and after. So I didn't tell her. I said I was tired. I kissed her forehead. And I carried the guilt back home with me like luggage no one else could see. But I told Saad, properly this time. I called her and said, "I'm in, fully." I want to be there for him. Whatever you need me to do. She didn't say much, just asked if I could pick him from school the next day. Let's start small, she said. Let him see you without knowing everything first. It was a smart move, one I respected. So I did it. I waited outside his school in Yaba, watched the crowd of children stream out, and spotted him, head down, earbuds in, backpack too big for his back. I waved. He walked over. I offered him a lift home. He hesitated, then agreed. We didn't talk much in the car, just small things, school stuff, music, a math test. But when he laughed at something I said, it hit me like a slap. I knew that laugh. It was mine. Not just in sound, but in timing, in rhythm. For the first time in my life, I felt like a father. Not because a test said so, but because something in my blood recognized something in his. And it scared me more than anything ever had. A week later, I attended his school's inter-house sports event. Saad didn't tell him I was coming. She just told me the time and venue and said, "Be early." I stood at the far end of the field, among other parents holding water bottles and cheering. When he ran, I held my breath. He was fast, graceful, the kind of fast you don't teach, the kind that lives in the bones. He came second. I clapped until my hands hurt. He didn't see me, but that didn't matter. I saw him. I saw the boy I had helped create but had done nothing to raise. And I felt a strange mix of grief and gratitude. Grief for the years I lost, gratitude for the chance to witness him now. After the event, I stayed back, bought him a cold drink, asked him about school again. He talked more this time. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was pretending. I just listened. I just showed up. Later that evening, I visited Saad to thank her. She looked tired, hair in a scarf, t-shirt slightly wrinkled. But her presence filled the room like always. "Thank you," I said. She didn't roll her eyes. She didn't say, "For what?" She just nodded. I told her I wanted to be consistent, that I didn't want to disappear again, that even if she never forgave me, I hoped Timmy would. She listened. Then she said something I didn't expect. "Apologies are easy. Presence is harder. Let's see how long you last." It wasn't cruel. It was real. And I respected it. Because forgiveness wasn't a prize I could buy. It had to be earned. She didn't let me stay long. She said she had laundry to do. As I stood at the door, she handed me a folder, Timmy's school schedule, health notes, emergency contacts. It was the first time she trusted me with anything beyond words. And I held that folder like it was gold. Because maybe it was. My mother has a sixth sense for scandal, especially the kind that can stain the Okoye name. It started with a simple question during Sunday lunch. "What were you doing in Surulere on Wednesday?" The question came wrapped in a smile, like a mother innocently asking about her son's errand. But I knew better. I paused mid-chew. "Business," I replied. "Meeting an old client." She nodded, still smiling, but her eyes locked on mine for a second longer than necessary. That was when I knew something or someone had said something. My mother ran our family's image like a government agency. If she caught a whiff of smoke, she followed it until she found the fire. I should have expected it. The Okoye staff gossiped with stylists, drivers, decorators. One of them must have spotted me with Saad or recognized Timmy from a photograph passed around too casually. She didn't ask again at the table. But the next morning, I woke up to a forwarded message from her. An Instagram screenshot from a private blog account with blurry photos of me and a woman and teenager at a mainland restaurant. No names, just suggestions. And in Lagos, suggestion spreads faster than truth. Later that day, she called me into her private study, where she conducts all her most damning interrogations under the soft hum of a ceiling fan and the strong scent of peppermint oil. "Is there something I should know?" she asked, sliding the photo across her desk like a lawyer presenting evidence. I didn't deny it. I didn't confirm it either. I just said, "It's nothing serious." That was the wrong answer. Her voice changed. "I have worked too hard for this family's name to be dragged into a scandal a few weeks before your wedding." I reminded her it wasn't a scandal. It was a child. She froze, just briefly. Then she stood up and walked to the window. "Are you telling me you fathered a bastard and hid it all these years?" Her voice was cold, not angry, strategic, like a woman already calculating the cost of damage control. "He's not a mistake," I said, softer now. "He's my son." She turned. "And what of Adiz? What of the Adegbile family? You think they'll accept this?" I didn't have an answer, only fear, because in her world, love didn't matter. Appearances did. And she made it clear. If I let this child ruin the wedding, I wouldn't just lose a marriage, I'd lose her too. I didn't get the chance to confess. The truth found Adiz before I did. A message. A photo. Maybe from the same blog my mother saw. Or worse, maybe from someone inside her own circle. One night, I came to her apartment in Ikoyi, exhausted from pretending, ready to finally tell her. But when I walked in, I knew it was too late. She was standing by the window, holding her phone like it had betrayed her. "Is it true?" she asked without turning around. I didn't pretend. I didn't dodge. "Yes." That one word shattered the silence. She turned slowly, eyes brimming, not with rage, but something worse, hurt laced with dignity. "So I had to find out like this? A photo? A caption saying Lagos groom caught on the mainland with mystery child?" I tried to explain. I said it happened 15 years ago, before I ever knew her. That it was just one night. That I didn't even know until now. She listened. She didn't interrupt. And when I finished, she sat down slowly on the edge of the cream-colored ottoman and asked, "Do you love him?" I blinked. "Who?" "The boy." I nodded. "I'm learning to." The silence that followed was brutal. She picked up a throw pillow and clutched it like armor. "Do you know what this means, Chuka? My parents. They won't just be angry. They'll be humiliated. They'll say I'm marrying a liar. A man who hides children. Do you understand what that looks like? What it feels like?" I sat beside her, trying to hold her hand. She pulled away gently. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked again, voice breaking. "I was going to," I whispered. "But I was scared." That made her laugh, a short, bitter sound. "Scared of what? Losing me? Or losing your mother's approval?" That one hit hard. She stood, smoothing her dress like she needed control. "I need space," she said. "Not because I don't love you, but because right now, I don't recognize you." I left her apartment that night not as a groom, but as a man stripped bare, no rehearsed speeches, no tailored suit, no future plan. Just the sound of a woman breaking quietly behind a closed door. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't blame Saad. I blamed myself. Lagos doesn't wait for facts. It feeds on fragments. By Monday, the whispers had turned into full-blown speculation. Office group chats pinged with screenshots. A driver claimed his madam said she heard from a decorator that the Okoye boy had a child with a low-class woman. Adiz's cousins stopped returning my calls. Her mother sent a message through one of her sisters requesting clarity before they proceeded with the final vendor payments. And my own team at work, the same ones who used to look at me like a leader, started avoiding eye contact. One of the junior associates left a tab open on the office computer, showing a blog headline, "Banana Island groom caught in baby mama scandal days to wedding." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because Lagos always finds a way to turn your pain into public entertainment. Meanwhile, Sada's phone was blowing up too. Strange numbers, threatening messages, DMs accusing her of blackmail. I drove to her flat that night and found her crying silently on the balcony. "I told you this would happen," she said. "I told you your world eats people like me." I didn't have the luxury of outrage. I had allowed the storm to build. I sat beside her and asked if she and Timmy were safe. She nodded but said she was considering taking him to stay with a cousin outside Lagos until things cooled down. "I'm not ashamed of him," she added, "but I won't let people destroy him because of your mess." Her words stung, but she was right. I held her hand. She didn't pull away this time. We sat in silence, watching the night crawl over the city. The thing about Lagos is that it forgives wealth, not scandal. You can cheat, lie, even steal, but the moment your secret becomes public, you're no longer a man. You're gossip. I made a decision that night. I would protect them. Properly. No more hiding. No more half measures. I called my lawyer the next morning and said, I need full parental recognition in place. Joint guardianship, custody, anything that makes him legally mine. It was time I put my name where my mouth was. Because love, real love, is not just affection. It's action. And I was finally ready to act. The first real threat came through a lawyer's letter, sent anonymously to Sada's office. It accused her of defamation, of manipulating a prominent figure for financial gain, and demanded she cease and desist from presenting herself or her child in any association with the Okoye family. She sent me a scanned copy, her hands visibly shaking in the photo. I saw red. I called my mother. She didn't deny it. She just said, she brought this upon herself. If she had kept her mouth shut, none of this would be happening. That was when I realized my mother wasn't just protecting reputation. She was on offense. She saw Saad as a threat to legacy, and in her world, threats were to be erased, not reasoned with. I warned her to back off, told her any harm to Saad or Timmy would be a war. Her reply was chilling. Be careful who you go to war against, Chuka. After that call, I increased security around Sada's compound. A friend from law school connected me to a private firm. Cameras were installed. Phone lines were changed. The streets were watching, and I had to watch back. Through it all, Saad never asked for help. Not once. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She stayed calm. For Timmy. For herself. But I could see it. The exhaustion. The terror masked as resilience. One night, I brought her groceries. She sat on the kitchen floor after I helped her unpack, legs folded beneath her, and finally broke the silence. Do you know why I never looked for you? She asked. Because I didn't want you to feel like a rescue mission. I didn't want my son to think his worth came from your money or your last name. I sat beside her. You were never a mistake, I said. Not you. Not him. She didn't respond, but she leaned slightly toward me. And for the first time, it felt like the air between us wasn't heavy with unfinished sentences. It felt human. We weren't back to anything. We weren't in love. But something had shifted. I wasn't just the boy who disappeared after a one-night stand anymore. I was the man willing to stay. And even if she didn't trust that yet, she was beginning to believe it. The week of the wedding arrived like a storm I couldn't outrun. My name was still on the banners. The hall was still paid for. Guests were flying in. The pastor had finalized the program. Adi's gown had already been altered. My suits had been pressed. But everything felt like cardboard, hollow, fragile, decorative. I sat through rehearsals with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Adi's was cold, distant, but polite. We didn't argue anymore. That would have been too honest. Instead, we walked through the steps like actors in a play we no longer wanted to perform. One night, during the final family dinner, she took me aside. Let's just do it, she said quietly. Let's get through the wedding. Then we figure everything else out later. I looked at her, really looked. Her eyes were tired, but not broken. She wasn't desperate. She was strategic. What about the child? I asked. She didn't flinch. Keep him. Quietly. Care for him if you must. Just don't let it ruin what we've built. That was when I realized this wasn't about love anymore. It was about optics. That conversation haunted me. I sat in my car after dropping her off, replaying her voice in my head. Keep him. Quietly. Like a secret I could afford to own, as long as I never displayed it. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. When did I become this person? A man willing to divide himself into compartments. Husband on paper. Father in secret. Puppet to a system I once swore I'd never bow to. That night I called Saad. Can I see him tomorrow? She said yes. I took Timmy to a park near Unilag. We walked. We laughed. I taught him how to skip stones across the pond, even though I was terrible at it. And when he looked up and said, "You're different from what Mom said you'd be," I asked, "What did she say?" He shrugged. "That you might not stay, but I think you're trying." That night, I cried in the car for the first time since this started. Not from shame, from clarity. I wasn't trying to save face anymore. I was trying to save myself. and I knew what I had to do. The morning of the wedding arrived, dressed in splendor and dread. I opened my eyes to the scent of freshly steamed fabric and the sound of distant laughter echoing down the hallway of the luxury hotel suite my mother had booked for the groom's family. The entire floor had been reserved, filled with stylists, groomsmen, relatives, and over-prepared wedding planners who moved like stagehands in a Broadway production. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my white agbada, trimmed with gold embroidery, and for a moment, I looked like the man the world wanted to see, wealthy, powerful, picture-perfect. But I felt hollow. My smile came with effort. My chest felt tight. Even the customized cologne I sprayed on my neck felt like a mask. As we drove in a convoy to the church, I stared out the tinted glass at the streets of Lagos, chaotic, loud, honest. And I envied every bus conductor yelling fares, every woman hawking water sachets in the sun. They had nothing to prove. Meanwhile, I was heading to a pulpit, rehearsing vows I knew I could no longer say in good conscience. The church was breathtaking. Flowers everywhere. A massive LED screen displayed our names in elegant cursive, Adiz and Chuka, a forever love. The pews overflowed with guests, senators, business moguls, socialites with gelly-like crowns. My mother sat in the front row, radiant in blue lace, flanked by family friends and reputation guardians. And there she was, Adiz, gliding down the aisle in white, regal and unreadable. When she reached me, she didn't smile. We held hands coldly. The pastor began the ceremony with his usual booming grace. Bible verses, short sermon, light jokes to ease the tension. Then came the moment. If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. My heart pounded. The silence stretched. The pastor continued. Chuka, do you take Adiz? And I stopped hearing. All I could see was Timmy's face, laughing beside me at the pond. Saad on the kitchen floor, staring at her strength like it betrayed her. My own reflection the night I cried in the car. I looked into Adiz's eyes, saw her hope battling her pride, and I knew I couldn't do it. I couldn't lie to God, to her, to myself. I'm sorry, I said, my voice shaking. I can't do this. The gasp that rippled through the congregation was so loud it seemed to shake the marble tiles beneath my feet. For a few seconds, no one moved. No one breathed. Then came the rustling of fabric, the murmurs, the sound of phones being drawn out like weapons. Adiz blinked at me like I had slapped her. What did you say? She whispered. The pastor tried to regain control. Let's all stay calm. Perhaps we should speak privately. But I stepped away from the altar, still holding the microphone. I can't marry you, I said, louder this time. It's not fair to you, not fair to me. There are things I haven't told you, things I should have told you. And I won't enter a marriage based on secrets. My mother stood up. Chuka, she snapped. Sit down now. But I didn't. I faced the crowd, not as a groom but as a man finally waking up from a performance. I have a son, I said. He's 15. I only found out recently. And hiding him, hiding the woman who raised him, that's not love. It's cowardice. And I'm done being a coward. The aftermath was instant and brutal. Adiz collapsed into her seat, her white gown a puddle of sorrow. Her father stormed out, flanked by angry uncles. My mother was frozen, her face unreadable but her fury palpable. Phones captured everything. The cameras meant for beautiful memories now turned to document a public disaster. I walked out of the church into the blinding Lagos sun. Alone. No driver. No friends. Just noise. People called out my name, some confused, some cheering, some disgusted. I ignored them all. I walked until I found an Okada and rode pillion to the mainland. Suit rumpled, sweat soaking through fine fabric. I arrived at Sada's compound, still stunned by what I had done. She opened the door before I knocked. You saw? I asked. She nodded. It's all over the blogs. Her voice was quiet. I didn't ask for comfort. I didn't deserve it. I just said, I told the truth. She nodded again. Good. I stood there, trembling, not from regret, but from release. I had chosen the storm. Now I had to learn how to live inside it. By morning, my name had replaced every wedding hashtag with versions soaked in scandal. Hashtag groom walks out, hashtag Lekki wedding saga, hashtag Okoye drama. My PR team resigned before noon. My phone buzzed endlessly with missed calls from business partners, old friends, and strangers offering opinions I never asked for. One blog even claimed I left Adiz because I found out she was infertile, completely false, but believable in a city where lies travel faster than traffic. My company's board called an emergency meeting. One director said, "You've become a liability." Another added, "We invested in a clean name." I knew I had a choice: public apology and spin, or quiet exit. I chose the latter. I resigned as CEO that afternoon. No press release, just a signed letter and a handshake from the only board member who whispered, "Good for you." At home, my mother didn't speak to me. She removed my photos from her sitting room wall. When I tried to explain, she hissed, "You ruined us for a bastard." I didn't fight. I just walked out. Because trying to make people understand something they are committed to misunderstanding is a battle that drains your soul. With everything stripped away, titles, weddings, family pride, I focused on the one thing I still had, the chance to be a father. It wasn't glamorous. Timmy didn't jump into my arms. He didn't call me Dad. He asked tough questions. "Why didn't you come earlier? Why did you hurt Mum? Will you disappear again?" I answered them all. Honestly, even when it made me look bad. I started showing up: school pickups, dentist visits, math homework. I stood at the back during his coding club presentation and clapped like it was the Nobel Prize. I didn't post any photos. I didn't use him to clean my image. I just stayed. Some days he ignored me. Other days he sent me memes. Progress was measured in small miracles. With Saad, things were careful. She let me help more, share bills, attend meetings, make decisions. But she never let me assume anything. No overnight visits. No kisses. No talk of reconciliation. "You're not here to win me," she once said. "You're here to win yourself back." And I took that lesson seriously. Because redemption wasn't a gift. It was labor. I tried once to kiss her. It was a Saturday night. We had just come back from a parent-teacher conference, and we stayed up late drinking malt and talking. She looked tired but soft in the lamplight. I leaned in out of instinct. She leaned back out of instinct. "No," she said gently. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." I nodded, embarrassed, and stood to leave. She didn't apologize, and I didn't sulk, because deep down I respected it. The old me would have interpreted that as rejection. But now I saw it for what it was: boundaries. The truth is, I had broken something. And even if she forgave me, she wasn't obligated to love me. Her heart wasn't a prize to be won with fatherhood points. It was her own, entirely hers. So I stopped trying to romance her. I focused on presence, consistency. We became co-parents who sometimes watched movies, sometimes argued over homework routines, sometimes laughed like old friends. It wasn't a love story. Not yet. It was something more honest, healing in motion. And healing wasn't linear. Some days I wanted to run, especially when former colleagues whispered behind my back or when friends asked, "Are you still with that woman?" As though Saad was a punishment. But I stayed. I started therapy. I read books on fatherhood. I called my estranged cousin who had raised twins alone and listened to him talk about responsibility. I showed up for Timmy's chess tournament and held Sada's bag when she had to take a call during parent orientation. Slowly, things began to shift. She let me hold her hand when the power went out one night. She invited me to a friend's baby dedication, saying, "You might as well come. Everyone assumes we're together anyway." And when Timmy once introduced me at his birthday as my dad, I excused myself to the bathroom and cried quietly. No one saw that moment. No one clapped. But it was the first time I felt like I belonged to something real. Not a legacy. Not a marriage contract. Just a boy, a woman, and a second chance unfolding with no guarantee. Took 9 months. 9 long months of unlearning, rebuilding, and showing up in silence. By then, the noise had died down. Lagos had found new scandals to feast on. My mother hadn't forgiven me, but she visited Timmy once, unannounced, and left a pair of shoes and a stiff envelope with a note. For school, it was a crack in her ice. Not a thaw, but something. Adiz got engaged to someone else, and we had a brief, polite conversation over the phone. She said, "I hope you're happy, Chuka." I told her, "I'm learning how to be." And then one Sunday evening, while washing dishes in Sada's kitchen after dinner, I asked her, quietly, without ceremony, "Can I stay?" She looked at me, soap suds on her hands, and replied, "You've already been here." I smiled. "No. I mean, can I build something with you? Not just as Timmy's father, as your partner. If you'll have me." She was quiet for a while. Then she dried her hands, turned to me, and said, "One day at a time. If you can do that, then yes." There was no ring, no photographer, no proposal post with matching outfits. Just her words, just that yes. It wasn't loud, but it was real. And it was enough. We didn't move in together immediately. We didn't blend bank accounts or plan another wedding. We just started again on even ground. I got a modest apartment nearby. We co-parented like teammates. And on Friday nights, we sometimes sat on her balcony and watched Lagos blink back at us. A city that had once swallowed me whole and somehow spat me out renewed. I still had a long way to go. So many pieces to mend. But I was no longer performing. No longer hiding. I was just a man. Loving slowly. Showing up daily. Building a life not for applause, but for peace. Timmy hugged me tighter now. Saad laughed more often. And me? I finally understood that real love wasn't dramatic or convenient. It was patient. It was earned. And when I lay in bed at night, hearing the distant hum of okadas and generators, I no longer feared the silence. I had become someone I could live with, someone worth the truth.